Wow. A little bit of technical difficulties during our dance here there. So if you saw me disappear, that wasn't me dancing off the screen. That was a little bit of technical difficulties, but solved before we started. Well, I am thrilled to be here today. My colleague Chris isn't joining me, but we're all good. Just to remind you, as always, this episode is sponsored by Domino One, the solution organization that people rely on when they want to create, manage, and deliver learning efficiently and at scale. And I'm excited today. We have a great guest. Some of you may already know Mike from before, but Mike Simmons there. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell the world a little bit about what brings you here to Idiotic today.
Well, and for those of you who are watching the video, you saw me in that very uncomfortable moment with music playing. I am not a dancer. I feel extremely uncomfortable moving around. I was the kid at all of those dances that would kind of stand in the corner and be away from everybody, or at least congregate at a table where people were talking. I'm Mike Simmons. I am the founder of a company called Catalyst, and I've been fortunate enough to be on this show a couple of times in the past. I'm an old operations person, customer success person before you even call the customer success, and then salesperson, and have operated in the learning technology space for a number of years, including some really old companies like SmartForce and Skillsoft and O'Reilly Media. And I've been operating Catalyst now for just about 10 years. I live out in Arizona and I focus on revenue, operations, and achieving results or execution.
Well, hey, thanks again. And I was thrilled that you were able to join us again for our relaunch Idiotic sessions. Today, we're here to talk about, ironically, meetings. And meetings can have challenges, even virtually. There's, of course, technical challenges. We're not really going to talk about those too much unless it's really appropriate. But meetings and culture and culture around meetings, I've always thought about, there's, of course, we always have meetings in there, but sometimes we have, not sometimes, I'd say often we have meetings for, it seems, meeting's sake. And there's perhaps different ways that could be accomplished. Let's say I don't think there's anybody out there, even people are doing it well, that wouldn't say that you couldn't have a more efficient meeting. Thoughts about meetings in general and things that you might want to, if you were an L&D leader, what
Yeah.
one thing might you do to implement a change to the meeting culture? Because it really is an approach. I was at a group for a while where it was like, you soon learn every meeting started 10 minutes late. So people learn to go ahead and just show up late.
Yeah, it's one of those crazy things. Think about it. So if you set this expectation of meetings starting 10 minutes late and people start showing up 10 minutes late, what happens when they start showing up, they start occurring 10 minutes later than that? And they just get pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. I think one of the biggest challenges, I mean, there are people out there, you might be listening right now or watching this. There are people out there who think the value they deliver to their business are the number of meetings that they're in. They've got this really full calendar. And they're like, "Oh, I've got this really full calendar. If you look at this, it's really hard to book time. And even if I block time, I may or may not defend time, but I've got this full calendar." So we over popularize or over focus on the idea that we've got all of these meetings and we're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And this comes from Clayton Christensen, Jobs to Be Done. And if you're not familiar with Clayton Christensen, do this quick search. Do a search for Jobs to Be Done, Milkshake, and HBR. And just take a note and write that down and go do that after this is over with. We'll talk a little bit about that as we're going through this. But if you look at applying a Jobs to Be Done framework to the meeting, then you realize, hey, it's really important for us to understand, number one, what the goal of the meeting is, what's our actual objective. And then number four in that framework, it's how are we going to design to achieve that result? And then we'll kind of build in some of the middle stuff. But it's rare that people go into a meeting. Actually, I'll ask you this, Paul, how often do you think people go into a meeting with a very clear objective? What percentage of the time?
I would say sadly it's closer to 10%.
How often do they actually share that objective with the other people who are participating in the meeting?
Not often enough. I mean, I've seen too many cases, and I'm guilty of it too,
Sure.
of not having an agenda on the meeting and objectives, and perhaps sharing that in advance because not everyone coming to the meeting has the same objectives.
Well, and that's the thing. Like you can build out a call plan, and a call plan is a little bit different than an agenda. For the call plan, what I want to know is who's actually going to be in the room. So who are the people that we're going to bring into the room? The first thing I want to understand beyond that is their objectives. Like, why are they going to spend time, energy, or attention meeting with me? Why are they going to invest resources in their energy and their time and their attention in that room? On the other side, I want to know what my objectives are. And I look at this as our objectives because sometimes I'm working with multiple people as we go through this. But like, what are our objectives? So as Domino meets with customers, what are our objectives in the meeting? What are the customers' objectives, right? Or if we as learning and development professionals, when we're meeting with our subject matter experts, what's their objective? What's our objective? On this side, we're anticipating what their objective is. We're anticipating that. We're kind of guessing. But if we haven't taken the time to anticipate their objective, we're allowing a lot of risk here. And then the last piece I want to know are what are our desired next steps? And for desired next steps, I like to have at least 3 desired next steps. I use odd numbers for a purpose, and we can talk about that a little bit later too. But if I look at this shape, and this is a call plan, again, not an agenda, it's not the structure of the meeting, it's more of being prepared for the meeting. If I look at this shape and I've not taken the time to anticipate the objectives of others, I've got a dotted line on that side. That shape can't hold water. I've taken on risk. I shouldn't be holding that meeting. And it's very rare that people put together a call plan or apply an effective meeting tool like this to those meetings. If we do that more, we won't waste folks' times because we're going to anticipate the objectives of others. We're going to know what our objectives are, and then we can double check against the who's to determine we've got the right people in the room. So I don't know. That's how I think of meetings, and that's how I think you can apply. That's how you can apply it to the work that you do. And we're watching the chat. If anybody has a chat or question around this, please engage. If you go into your next meeting or even reflect on the last couple of meetings you had and just think, what were the objectives of the other people? What were my objectives? What were the desired next steps? Were any of those clear? And to Paul's point, it's probably less than 10% of the meetings that you're participating in where that stuff is clear, both from the organizer perspective and from the participant perspective. And if we're not doing it well from an organizer perspective, how can we help the participants do it? So let's lead first by doing that well from an organizer perspective and then build from there.
I was thinking as you're talking about, I mean, this is a great framework. I mean, there's all types of meetings that I've been involved in, other folks in. I think like sales meetings is
Sure.
probably good because it really draws out when it's done well and really poorly. And I think of the meetings where the sales person really didn't think clearly. I mean, they thought maybe what they wanted there, but they had their objectives. They didn't really even pull because you can kind of assume there, but in a sales course, you really need to ask them what do they want to get out of it there. And then if that's not done well, then you really see that meeting go off the rails and there isn't a follow up. There isn't, even if you thought about maybe what your objectives are, the bottom 3 ones, it doesn't happen. Where on the flip side, when that person is really good, because you ever see them, they've really structured it. They set that up. They set up that call plan, and it goes beautifully, and it moves that customer onto the other one. But I mean, this really applies to instructional designers when they're set up their meetings with their SMEs, their teams. I mean, if you want graphic design and other folks to come in or marketing to help them out with different things, or to achieve business objectives of what you're trying to do.
literally to any kind of communication that's happening. Many of you have kids, probably, or you're kids of parents. Either one of those things are likely true. At least one of those things is absolutely.
Yes.
So there's so if you think about that meeting, that last meeting you had with your parent, and you're sitting down at dinner or lunch or coffee or whatever. Who am I meeting with? What are their objectives? They want to know that you're feeling good, you're working on things that are interesting, you're healthy, maybe the kids are healthy, all of those kind of things. That's what the parent wants to know. On our objective side, I want to know that they're feeling good, that things are healthy, and the next steps might be to schedule the family vacation or schedule the time that we're going to get together for Thanksgiving as a group or whatever the thing is. But it applies in any form of communication, and I apply it in all of the communication that I do. And I use this so often that it becomes so ingrained in what I do. It's how I do the work that I do, that I think about it in emails when I'm sending something out or a text message even. Like, what's my objective of the text message? Is it to make them laugh? What's the objective of the other person's text message who's receiving it? To not be annoyed? Like, whatever it is, what's my desired next step? Where do we want to go? This applies in any form of human communication. Heck, you can even do it from a prompting perspective when you think about AI communication. Like, what's the objective of the AI? Right now, a lot of these tools are overly focused on making sure that they get positive feedback from you. Like, they achieve the result that you're looking for. So they're looking for some reinforcement. Well, that creates some risk in the way that we communicate there. So what are our desired next steps? My next steps might be a list of things to work through. Use this and your communication with others will get better, both in email communication, website communication, proposals, team meetings, one-on-ones. Here's the challenge. If you add multiple who's, so I add a couple of other people to this. Okay. Now, to Paul's point that he made up a little bit, or that he said a little bit earlier, each of those people might have different objectives. So we've added complexity to the equation. And when you add complexity, you increase risk. So be careful as you add in complexity that you slow down, take the time to do these things, and don't just rush into it and hope that everything's going to work out because you're super smart and whatever. So this applies whether we're talking about subject matter experts, we're talking about executive leadership. You think about that conversation you have to have with the CFO to get budget approved. What is their objective? Do you really know what the objective of the CFO is? Many of us think that the CFO is really just worried about keeping cost in control.
They're worried about what you're doing to grow, and they know that you need to spend money on that you've actually thought through, and here's your plan for how this will actually make a difference and why you believe it will make a difference.
They care about things like risk. They care about forecasting. They care about whether or not they're going to be over a forecast or below a forecast. I think if you're over forecast relative to the number of people that you're bringing inside an organization, there's so much risk that you're not going to achieve results. If you're under forecast, you might spend more than is necessary. So just take some time, pause. A lot of people talk about empathy, yet they don't know what that word means. I know it's inconceivable. A little Princess Bride nod, but we talk about this stuff, but we keep using those words, but we don't know what they mean. Let's make sure we take some time to empathize with the other person. And we can get into a model around that, around 4 ways of seeing, if it makes sense. But this is the framework that I like to use first when thinking about any type of communication, including meetings. And then we can either get into 4 ways of seeing, or we can move into jobs to be done. The jobs to be done is kind of interesting because we start breaking down the types of meetings that are out there. But Paul, where would you like to go?
Well, I was thinking just before we get into, I'd like to talk a little bit about jobs to be done, but
Yeah,
2 things were coming to mind.
sure.
One, when we're looking at the next steps, this is another area that, again, I've done well and I've done poorly. I've also seen it done well and poorly. Is setting up yourself for success. I mean, it's like I've heard this phrase, "Oh, we had a great meeting," but there's no follow up onto it there. I mean, great that people did feel like their objectives were heard or whatever. were in there, and everyone was addressed on there, but that bottom part wasn't addressed. And then the other concept there, and of course, we've been in a lot of this since COVID. Now there's the push to return back to work, which obviously is happening in some cases, and but maybe you could also touch on some of the other dynamics for a virtual meeting. I think we've always had meetings where there was the meetings, and to go ahead and quote another movie reference. I love that, Inconceivable, one of my favorite movies. But you'd be sitting in the meeting, and everybody's like, Bueller,
Yep.
Bueller. You know, people are there in virtual meetings. Let's face it, especially if you don't have video on, but even if you do have that on, people can tune out. They're paying attention. It's almost like they're giving themselves permission to, oh, this is the 10 seconds, this is the 2 minutes of the meeting that is applying to my objectives. But those are two I wanted to touch on with you before we kind of moved into jobs.
Yeah. So let's hit on that next step piece. The next step piece is really powerful when you think about what are the specific calls to action that we expect to happen. A mistake that people will make in revenue roles is they'll get to next steps and then they'll keep the meeting going. The reality is, let's stop that. Let's give people time back. We've gotten to the next steps. Let's stop it there. And if you another Moneyball or another movie reference, Moneyball, Billy Bean is on the call. Guy says yes. He hangs up the phone, and Jonah's character is like, "What just happened?" So there's a when you get to the next steps, move forward. Let's be really clear around what next steps are. Next steps are the next logical steps that are necessary to create movement so that we can build momentum. The key questions I like to ask here: who will do what by when? Who, the people, what by when? Like, if we know those things, and at the end of every meeting that you do with people, be really clear about this, like overly focused. I use different markers, different colors to help drive different things. The red ones are our next steps, so that at the end of a conversation, as we're wrapping up, I can go back and quickly summarize and say, hey, here's what we agreed to as next steps. Here's who's going to do that. What's the timeline, right? So who will do what by when? If you have a high level of clarity around that, then people know what they need to get done. Now, the next piece happens is create space in the background for them to get those things done. Because everybody out there has, I mean, like, how many people have checklists where they just keep adding new and new things to that checklist? And before you know it,
Yeah,
you
of
just have this.
course.
Yeah, right. So if we keep adding to the checklist and we as leaders are adding to other people's checklists, it gets in the way of them being able to do the what by when. So be careful about that as a leader. So who will, and you lead self. So when you're adding new stuff to your checklist, it gets in the way of the things you agree to as those next steps. But who will do what by when? And then use that information to hold ourselves accountable to getting that work done. And as leaders, make sure we're not dumping more stuff on our teams. So who will do what by when is really helpful for me with next steps. And the other thing that's also helpful is looking at next steps in the context of short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So what's next? What do we expect to have happen after that? And what's the thing that needs to happen after that? If we think of those things, then now all of a sudden we've deconstructed our challenge or things that we're delivering into smaller pieces so that those smaller pieces can be taken care of. And then we can start building forward movement, which ultimately will lead to momentum. So that's what I coach to and apply in teams that I'm working with across the customers that I've been fortunate to work with to help us get better at communication and ultimately that piece that you were talking about, which is follow through. Too often people leave some stuff in the parking lot, right? And nobody gets back to the parking lot. Nobody ever goes back to the parking lot of things. Or there's a lack of clarity around who will do what by when, and then nothing gets done. And then what happens? You have another meeting and you talk about the same thing. And there are some people in the room who are like, didn't we just talk about this like 6 months ago? And the reason why we did not clarify who will do what by when, and then give people the space to get those things done. Now, work is going to happen and things will get in the way of being able to do those things. So then you adjust, right? You start to shift and change your approach. You start to say, hey, where do things start to fit from a priority perspective?
Yeah, no, I thought about the parking lot, and it's apt that you have a whiteboard because I've seen parking lots that right there. It's erased. Maybe people remember what was in the parking lot. Maybe people don't remember what was in the parking lot, but having those notes and almost back like the school days where you had a bell, so you had enough time to move, is actually saying, hey, the meeting ends at whatever time, but our meeting time really ends 10, maybe 15 minutes before that. So
Right.
we have those 10 or 15 minutes always allotted for what are next steps. In other words, kind of like you had talked about, sometimes it's like, oh, we get into a discussion, keep going on, meeting goes over, and naturally next steps never ever happen.
This is where one of the having an external resource, and when I say external resource, it means somebody that's not necessarily on your team. So it'd be another member in your organization who's not on your team, guide the conversation can be really helpful. Be it as a facilitator who's watching the clock, who's helping things move around because people get super emotional, especially the leader of the meeting who stands up front and has the agenda and wants to move through and pull all of those things together. They can get caught up in the details and allow things to scope creep to happen, even in a meeting. Scope creep happens in technology and it happens in work and it happens in meetings. So if you've got an external resource, another member of the team who's maybe not another member of your organization is not part of the team, or a person you're like me who is out there, bring in an external resource and they can guide that conversation. They can facilitate that conversation. They're not the expert in the room. Their job is to keep things moving along that time. So that's an important piece. It's too often we try to do too much in the meetings. And that's where we'll get into some of those jobs to be done and be really clear about it. You had asked, or you'd mentioned the whole idea of how to do this in a remote environment, right? Like remote environment and in-person environment. I love going up to against the whiteboard and doing this with my team and clients. Like you give me a couple of markers and a whiteboard and be able to hand that marker off to somebody else to go through and do things. Now we get to build and create together. We get to be creative. It's the reason why I've invested in putting a much larger whiteboard behind me in this environment. If you go back to older videos, you'd see I had a smaller one that didn't take up the entire frame. This one now is like 7 foot by 4 foot. So it's a good size whiteboard, good audio, good camera to create an environment where now what I can do is take that in-person environment and bring it into the virtual environment and still have some of that energy transfer. So there's other ways that you can go about using technology. This is just a whiteboard and some markers, using technology to create an experience, even in a virtual environment, to help get your teams more engaged in this. There's a reason I use wireless lav mics. It allows me to move in and out and move through this. As you're watching this, you should feel some of that energy transfer. That's all by design. And so be intentional about the way that you hold and facilitate those meetings, not only in the planning, but the actual execution.
Yeah, and this was an early lesson I had when doing two-way video classrooms back in the 90s. And with those, you fast learn that the amount of energy that you project is dampened over virtual. So you have to, I mean, just like actors, you have to actually over energize on that, or people who are very energetic come through as perfect, on that. And I was thinking with the technology, Jay had some great questions and comments in the chat. They are talking about AI and maybe a custom GT or GPT, things that can help you with meetings. And it made me think of, you talked about, hey, having that person who's directing the meeting. And sometimes we have the luxury of that, or we know we have a problem. So we've hired Mike, to come in and help us with those things. Or I've had over the course of my career, a couple folks, not always consistent, but folks in there, they're like, they were really great at taking notes, providing the summaries, doing all that other stuff, but they're not always there. And, one of the great things I've seen come out of the recent technology and a nod to what Jay has said is that a lot of meetings now they incorporate AI. They not only transcribe everything in there, but they put in summaries, things like that, which is a step forward there. Obviously, you need to use that. So I was wondering what your thoughts on that, how those types of technologies that Jay's talking about can really help. And then also he said, yeah, harder on external meetings and stuff, but capturing that data. And I'm thinking, even if everyone was face to face, maybe it's good to have the Teams meeting or whatever meeting tool that you're using running just as you would that virtual assistant if you're leveraging those technologies.
Yeah. The cool thing about the AI tools that are out there, especially the ability to record and grab audio and do transcribe and do all of that stuff, is now there is tighter alignment between those things that are said. You can go back in and everybody can see, they can read the transcript of what was said. So there's no avoiding any of the verbal mistakes that I make in this conversation that we're having with each other because we could go back in and look at the transcript. So there are things that are said. In the past, we might not have had all of that information. The next piece is there are things that are heard. So everybody in the room is going to hear something a little bit different. Even when you read the transcript, there are things that are written and then there are things that are read. So they're said and then there's remember or heard. And the third piece is remembered. So we have said, heard, remembered, and very rarely are all three of those the same because sometimes we tune things out. You get distracted by the dog coming in or the baby crying or the Slack message that pops up or the instant message that pops up, any of those kind of things, the text that goes up, you get those distractions that are in there. So the tools can be really helpful relative to the whole said, heard, remembered piece, because the tool is not going to mishear something. I mean, other than depending on how the audio is, sometimes the words are going to be a little bit off or the pronunciation of the
Mm.
word. But that is one way that you can use tools. One of the things that I'm doing with the various AI tools and doing a lot with OpenAI, specifically around creating my own GPTs to take models like this and make it really simpler for people to build them out in the tool. So by prompting and asking simple questions like, okay, you're getting into a meeting. What is, who's going to be in the room? You know, okay, given what you know about who's going to be in the room, what would you anticipate their objectives are based on what you know about them? What do I anticipate their objectives are? What are my objectives? What are the desired next steps? And I've got, if you connect up with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to point you to some of this stuff, but specific GPTs around this and goal setting and execution, that becomes really powerful. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can create your own models. This is my model. It doesn't need to be your model. You can create your model that works for you inside your organization. And that is the thing that I'm most excited about when it comes to how AI is going to help enable this emerging technology is going to enable and empower humans to do better human things. You have things that they become naturally to me in the way that my brain works may not come naturally to you. Now you could use a tool and a thought partner to help build some of those things. The biggest challenge that you have is your creativity. Be creative, ask questions, engage, use, test. You can't reflect on what you're going to do. You have to go out there and do it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, just like you might, before you go write an article, you might have a process, a standard operating procedure of these are important keywords and objectives to us of what we're trying to accomplish in there. I'm thinking every time you learn something, this is human nature there, you learn something new, you learn it, you practice it, you become really good at it, you're going to start to drift back to your normal habits, which may mean that two of the three things that you learn, you're going to keep doing great. But the third one, you don't do it as well. And I'm thinking with a nice GPT tool set up to help you kind of prompt you to start off the meeting well, but a transcript, things like that could be fed into it there also to analyze and coach you where you've done well. And I've seen different things with the writing tools. Grammarly's doing this too. Is like, how is your writing style throughout the day? How have you improved there? But I think another important thing, back to some of Jay's comments there about the AI, is that still had that person coming in there who set up the meeting, maybe reviewing that, and because everybody got the email, but how many of us are looking at the recording, the transcript? Just, hey, here's the transcript there. You've got it here. Just a reminder, here's our objectives, that we're accomplishing, who's assigned, et cetera, with that, just to confirm and reinforce folks. And then I think the beauty is that not only do they see that, they're like, hey, I don't quite remember what that was about. They have all the context there, which would have been difficult to go ahead and retrieve in the past.
If I could give one more kind of tool or tip on this side that might be helpful, Jay, depending on the environment that you're in, if you've got a whiteboard in that meeting room or you've got some, what do they call those things? The easel, the rip off the piece of paper kind of thing, but you've got that easel,
Giant Post-it.
giant post-its. So
Yeah.
you've got giant post-its, you've got a whiteboard. Get those things, get that tool inside the room. It's a digital whiteboard put up on the screen. But when people share information, don't share word for word everything that they are in there. You're not one of those typers inside a courtroom. You want the key points. So get the words up on the whiteboard. And when those words start to show up on the whiteboard, what you'll find is more people in the room will get engaged. And it's a brain thing, a human thing. You like seeing your stuff up on the board. You're like, oh, hey, I said
Yeah.
that word, right? And there's a positive reinforcement. There's a dopamine hit that happens. This is part of that whole thing, like I'll do with guided whiteboard sessions. When people see it, they see their stuff on there, they get more engaged. They start to lean in. They don't disconnect. Then ask this question as you're going through it. Is there anything that's not up on the board that should be up on the board? Because if it's not on the board, it doesn't exist, right? That's the documentation. That's our note. That's our documentation. If there's anything that's not up on the board that should be on the board, let's get it up on the board. Then you can use tools like Office Lens. That's my favorite one for taking pictures of whiteboards. And if you use Office Lens, it will through OCR, it will let you be able to search for those words that were in that whiteboard. And now you can still erase the whiteboard. So that's the other cool thing about a whiteboard. If I make a mistake, I can just erase it. Like if that didn't belong up there, we just erase it and it's gone. If I do this in a text environment, handwritten notes like this, it's hard to erase it. I've got to cut it out. The colors I like to use are red for next steps, black for general text notes, blue for something interesting that I may want to bring up at some other point, but I don't want to talk about now because it's just going to distract people. And then green is kind of a wild card. Like if I need another thing because I didn't get there, then I'll throw green on there. But it's black for regular notes, blue for things that are interesting that I don't really want to talk about right now, and red for next steps. If you have a process, if you have a system, you'll get better at executing on the work that you want to do. And that's another. Now we're just talking about whiteboard technology or Post-it note technology, a couple of markers, and using that as a way to help people really stay engaged. Pardon me. Really stay engaged in the process. You'll see
Yeah.
the energy happen.
Was thinking that, I mean, you talked about, hey, people love to see there, but also it draws your attention to, hey, I've heard a lot of things. These are a critical point or point out of it. Just like an instructional designer in a self-paced course on a video might have, when a key point comes up, something on the screen pop up just to emphasize in case you were nodding off on there. But also with the colors, that's fantastic because then that's everyone's engaging. They know that and they're like, they don't quite agree with that or they're questioning it, that basically gives them permission to question and the direction of why that we're not aligned. Because that's the other important thing with every meeting there. The worst thing you could have is a meeting and have the next steps, but there were several significant players that were just either nodding or not aligned to that information.
Yeah. Yeah. When they get into that crosstalk at the end, they go talking in the hallway and then all of a sudden things change. And all of a sudden the reality is it's the culture inside your business, how we do what we do, that is breaking down the effectiveness of your communication and your execution. Alignment's critical. If you've got a lack of alignment, you lack integrity. If you lack integrity, you take on risk relative to your structure. If you lack alignment, you create friction. You will wear down things. You will burn people out. Alignment's critical.
And you end up having those meetings that people go, oh, here's another meeting for the meeting sex. We never accomplish anything. In fact, the only thing I come out of here is just being more frustrated with those people or whatever case wise. Well, hey, let's switch gears again. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on jobs and how that applies.
Okay, so this is my view on meetings. I've not heard anybody else organize it this way. Again, it's taking jobs to be done framework and applying it to meetings. I believe that there are 3 types of meetings. No more than that. 3 types of meetings. And every meeting that you get involved in can be organized under one of these 3 types of meetings. The first type of meeting is an information meeting where you're conveying information. Now, if you're limited to just conveying information, that belongs in an email. It should be shot in a video. Just get that out someplace. The key difference on this one is that you want information and then you want feedback, comments, questions. The feedback, comments, and questions piece is critical here. So if we're delivering information and expecting some kind of feedback, comment, or question, then the meeting has a purpose. And in that instance, we're using the feedback, comments, and questions to gain perspective around what people have actually learned. What did they get? Where we were confused. So if we launch a new piece of information out to the team and we push it out there, and then we pause and open things up for questions and comments, and there aren't any comments, something's happened, because there's no way that we've launched everything perfect. That you've got a challenge inside your business around how people feel comfortable asking questions or giving comments. But if we give the information out and we get some really interesting questions and comments, it can help inform how we build that information that we then convey out in the more standard form, whether it's written form or audio form or visual or video form, whatever that is. So that's meeting number one, information plus Q&A. Information.
Yeah, those company town hall meetings or your quarterly meetings. And I've seen both where they're like basically information up, maybe not even any time set aside for questions, which is the worst case. Or you set aside sometimes and it's every time crickets on there. And to me, like you said, that maybe it should be distributed a different way. Or you were trying to do it the right way, but there's something else going on where you need to encourage and figure out why folks are, because no one's perfect on all that information. Everyone has feedback and input potentially.
So one of the things that I like to do is remind folks that it is our obligation as leaders to ask questions. And it's our obligation to ask questions. And the reason why it's our obligation to ask those questions that we have, not questions to trick people or trap people or any of that kind of stuff, but questions we have, because if I have a question about something, there's likely somebody else in the room who has that same question. They may or may not have the same level of confidence that I have in asking the question. It is our obligation as leaders to ask those questions. Now, there's time and place for the right question. You got to be in, there's certain things that can happen, but that's to Paul's point, that's a culture challenge. It's something that's happening inside your organization. And if that's happening, pull people aside and ask them what's going on. If you want to like prompt or get people to start asking questions, ask your friend who's also going to be in the room. You're like, hey, can you ask this question? Because that question, when someone asks the first question, it kind of breaks the ice and then more people are more interested in asking. So you can get plans, get those plans scheduled around there. And that'll help with if we start going slow on the communication, he'll prompt us with some other questions. The second type of meeting is decision-making. And I'm going to just put DM here, but decision-making. In this type of meeting, it is very clear that we are going to make a decision. Okay. So to be prepared for this meeting, we need to know what decision we're going to be making. What is the specific decision that we need to make? Do we change open enrollment? Do we build this new course? Do we invest in this new technology? Whatever that is. So what is the specific decision that we're going to make? And how are we going to make it? So what are the criteria? What's the decision? Those have to be clear before we go into the meeting. If they're not clear before we go into the meeting, you're going to get into an information meeting with Q&A, and it's going to get distracting and all of that stuff is going to fall apart. So know what the decision is, what the criteria are, how we're going to make it, and then confirm that you've got all the right people, the who's in the room, who are impacted by the decision or have influence over the decision. Let's get the right folks in the room. So that's a what, a how, and then people. And I like to use little icons here. Go ahead, Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, I was thinking just that people part there. I've seen so many times they've not communicated, understood what those other people are expecting, or those people don't understand what's expected out of them. They have an expectation, but it's not, doesn't match what the meeting leader has for that decision-making process there.
So the thing that you can watch out for here from a risk perspective, The big one is having the right people in the room. Because let's say you're going to make a decision, you've got your criteria, and then you bring people in, and the person who actually can, the person who can do a final like go no go is not in the room, or the person whose team is going to be impacted by this and might have a different perspective is not in the room. You've just wasted everybody's time. So proper prior planning prevents poor performance, right? So do your call plan, apply it to either the information and Q&A, the decision making, and you will get better at those types of meetings. If your decision making meeting turns into a problem solving meeting, you're doing it wrong. You're too early. And you could either decide to change the meeting type, call a timeout, and then change the meeting type, or you can decide to end the meeting, give people back their time, and say, look, we need to reconvene. There's more information that we need to get before we're ready to do this. Again, as a leader, it is your obligation to make sure that you're using time, energy, and resources properly. So lead well. And I know this is hard. Many times you get over-energized leaders who are very direct, who have a perspective and want to share it. And I have been that person historically in my career. I've gotten a little bit better as I've gotten older and a little bit grayer, and I've added some wrinkles and have more experience. But the people can come into that room and be very persuasive. You might need to ask them a very direct question to get them back in order. This is where a facilitator can be helpful, because the facilitator doesn't have the same organization risk that you have in there. The third meeting, and this is the one where I think we waste the most time inside organizations. Not think, I mean, I see it. It's the collaborative meeting where we bring multiple people from multiple groups or even the same team together into a room to collaborate on something. And we can go ice, ice, baby, stop, collaborate, and listen. Like we will bring people together in this meeting. And this is the one where we waste the most time. And the reason why we waste the most time is we don't have clarity around what our next steps are. And it's not clear who's going to do what by when. And things get thrown into the parking lot. And there's so many different things. If you think about the collaborative meetings that you've had out there, where you've had multiple folks together who have multiple agendas. Again, these are complex meetings. You will start to say, oh yeah, I can see how much time we waste, not only in that meeting, but in the weeks between that meeting and the next meeting, or the months between that meeting and the next meeting, or the next meeting that you have in that instance. Ilya asked, the meeting that could have been an email, that's that information meeting that doesn't require feedback, questions, or comments. If it's an information meeting and you don't want feedback, questions, or comments, put it into a shared doc, put it into a video, put it into something. The collaborative meeting is a little bit different. This is one where we know that we want to bring people together to achieve a specific result, a desired outcome. So those are the three jobs to be done of meetings. Inside the collaborative meeting, I think there are three types of collaborative meetings that I focus on. One is a problem-solving meeting. How do we bring a team together to align on solving a problem? We use the collective intelligence of the team. Another one is a process design meeting. How do we design a process to achieve a specific set of results? So apply some design thinking. And then the third type of collaborative meeting, at least from my perspective, that I help folks with, is alignment on strategy and tactics. So goal setting and execution. How do we align on strategy and tactics to achieve a result? So align to achieve a result, solve a problem, or build process to achieve something. What do you think about the three jobs to be done of meetings?
Well, I was thinking, first off, a couple of things. One is this is a great framework in my mind to think about, hey, I'm going to a meeting. Which one of those types of is it? And that helps me start to frame of what I should be aiming to get out of it, what I should be aiming for other folks to, and kind of setting that up. Jay had a great question there to throw
Yeah.
out a little bit aside there is we have any value in standing meetings. I think of those for those folks who, at least the way I understand it, those are like scrum meetings. They're usually stand up. Hey, it's 5 minutes, no more, no less, although that goes off the rails all the time, or 30 seconds, no more, no less. Of what am I doing? What are you doing to keep everyone informed?
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit like a number one to me, but I really want to hear, is that one of those other meetings, or where is it? Or perhaps
Yeah.
it is this type, but here's where it falls off the rails.
Yeah. So I'd put it right in there. Paul, you're on it. It's that number one meeting. it's the information, and I'm expecting there to be feedback and comments. So if I'm constantly doing those updates and there's never feedback and comments, meaning people just disconnect, nobody says something like, oh, that's interesting or whatever, then maybe your format or your approach relative to that meeting is not right. Or maybe your timing on how often you have those meetings is not right. But that's where I would put that kind of the daily stand up or the weekly stand up. And the three questions I like to ask in those kind of meetings. So I'd put one-on-ones in that category too. The three questions I like to ask: what's working? What's not working? Where are you stuck? What are you struggling with? Like, what's working? What's not working? Where are you stuck? And that gets into the traditional start, stop, continue model. Too often people struggle with hey, so what should we start? What should we stop? What do we want to keep going? But like the what's working, what's not working, where are we stuck? I would put that stand-up type meeting into this category. The other thing I would caution everybody who's listening to this and paying attention and thinking about how you apply it in your business: do not attempt to do more than one job in a meeting. The meeting has one job. There's one. It's like that dude in City Slickers. One. Like you got to figure out what your one is. Gary Keller has a book out there, The One Thing. Like one. If you're struggling with execution, achieving results in your business, you're not getting where you want to go personally or as a team, likely the answer is not more. It's not add complexity. It's simplify, create clarity, then execute on that. One job to be done. And people might get frustrated with it until they start to see it. And then what will end up happening, and I get this feedback often, that was the best meeting we've had in, this year or in years. Like when you have teams that will say that kind of stuff out loud, it's pretty powerful. The meeting has one job. And if you haven't been able to identify the job, you've not earned the right to call people together in a meeting, from my perspective.
Well, I think about that one, and I think probably I'm just postulating what Jay might have experienced in some of those types of meetings. Is that meeting went off the rail, and that someone had a stuck, like you said, and someone else, instead of just saying, "Hey, I could help out with that," started a discussion, a collaboration, or whatever. Basically, turned it into a meeting three instead of just saying, "Hey, that's great. You two get together afterwards and solve that." Or it became, should we really be doing this decision? And again, and that makes me think about why it's off the rails as opposed to good, is that other type of meeting, those some folks may not be appropriate to have in that call. Don't need to be that. And then you get that tuned out and meeting for meeting's sake there too. And again, you lose focus.
You lose focus. And it's just a waste of time, energy, and resource. The reason why we have operating systems like on our computers and in our business and for ourselves is so that we apply energy and resources effectively, right? We reroute energy and resources effectively. And when you think about operating systems, they include the combination of process and tools. This is a tool. This is a tool. Figuring this stuff out is a process. Combined together, you create a system, and that system can help you make an impact inside your organization when it comes to improving meeting effectiveness and getting away from a lot of the waste that happens, which is people being super busy, having checklists that just continue to expand, and ultimately not being fulfilled in the work that they're doing. So you just start changing your perspective around how you think about communication, this stuff, how you think about organizing meetings and jobs to be done, and you will start to see things shift and change. And this is hard. It's hard because you're in a meeting and you're focused on making a decision, and then the problem comes up and you're like, ooh, you know what? That's kind of interesting. We could go through and solve it. You've just allowed scope creep. Be a leader. Pause and say, does it make sense to solve that problem first before we make a decision? Or can we park that and then schedule a separate meeting with other people, whoever they are, to have the right people in the room to go through that problem solving exercise?
Yeah, I'm thinking and wrapping up here, there. A couple of things of takeaways, and a couple came to mind myself, but I'd love for you to share a couple. Hey, if you're going to start out, take a couple baby steps away, what you should do. And a couple of things I thought from what you were just saying is, one, take a look at those meetings and get in the habit of identifying which of those three jobs it's to accomplish. Then another thing I thought would be a good is whether you use your framework there of who, next steps, et cetera there, but you have a framework and always be looking at me, okay, keep trying to always apply that, perhaps using some technology to help you with that. Any other good takeaways for folks of, hey, if you're going to do a couple things to get off on the right track, what should they be doing?
Yeah. I mean, number one, and I said it a little bit earlier, but you can't reflect on what you're going to do. So you can't sit here and think, yeah, you know what? I'd really like to do this kind of stuff better, or yeah, whatever. Go out there and do it. Just put the stuff into action. Build out your own tool or use this one to check how you're communicating with others. What's happening from a communication perspective. Look at these from a jobs to be done perspective and say, if I look back, you can reflect on the last couple of meetings that you've had, right? You already had those, you did those. So you can look back and reflect on them and just say, how many jobs did we attempt to do in that meeting? Have a little bit of fun. How many of those meetings were information meetings where nobody provided feedback and questions and comments? And that could have been one of those things where you go back in and say, hey, that we should never have had that meeting. It should have been recorded. And now as a team, we're actually going to communicate this as a podcast to our team or a short video to kick off the week rather than waste everybody's time in that operating environment. So go through, reflect on the meetings that you've already had, apply this against it, maybe even look at some of the meetings that you've had and put this context together and see where some of your gaps are. I'm going to change some things up. I want to be more intentional about how we have our meetings. I'm going to use a call plan, and I'm actually going to share that call plan. And I'd like you to tell me, did I anticipate your objectives properly, and get feedback, because that feedback will help you iterate. I'm going to look at things from a jobs to be done perspective and look at these in these categories. Every time that you see me try to do more than one of these in a meeting, call me on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing to break down, and some people will be thinking about this, what about those offsites where we're together for a couple of days? Take 30 minutes of your agenda for this one, and then another 30 minutes for this one. Use your agenda for the meetings to cover those things and keep those focused in that area. It's not that, okay, we're coming together as a group and we can only do decision-making for that entire day. No, break it up, be intentional about the way that you operate. Those are some of the things that I would do now and start applying it.
Well, hey, Mike, this has been truly awesome. It's every time this topic, honestly, I think about it, I think, geez, I could be better myself, on there. And it's great to have this framework to think about it. I think one takeaway here is don't keep trying, keep doing. And failure, again, is not failure. It's just a identification of what to improve later when you're looking at that, because there's always areas that you can improve upon with your meetings there. And yeah, I think hopefully some of you have had this experience of, wow, that was a great meeting. If not, apply some of these. I'm sure at some point you will have that and go, yeah, there is value in this. Well, hey, thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and dance on out of here.